You need to have your thinking caps on. Don't be doff this morning. Otherwise, you're going to really struggle with this message. So like switch on now. Tell the person next to you, hey, switch on. Yeah. Not switch on your phone. Switch on. But why? But why? Do you ever find yourself asking that question, but why? When things happen, usually things outside of our control, they're things that affect us negatively. We ask this question, but why? Let me give you 3 examples. You go to the restaurant, they bring you the menu. You pore over it. You make a soul-based decision as to what you're going to have. You present that to the waitress. She disappears and comes back and says, sorry, that's the one thing we don't have. The question is, but why? This one you'll identify with. Someone races past you. You're driving along, someone races past you, cuts in front of you, only 200 meters along, to stop one car ahead of you at the traffic light. But why? This one you'll definitely like. You hear that in this great nation of South Africa, we have one very outdated printer that makes every driver's license card that is in this room and it is in this country. You've got to ask yourself, why? For goodness sake, but one. Is anyone else with me? You get the question, but why? Things happen, you go, but why? But why was definitely the question on the lips of the disciples in our text today. Let's get straight to it. Jesus and his disciples are sharing the Passover meal together in Jerusalem. You and I know by now that this was to be, that's why it's called the Last Supper, this was to be the last meal they would have together as a group. They didn't know it at the time, but we know now that this was the last meal. Jesus, however, at that meal, he knew that it was his last supper with them. And so he spends those last few moments to speak to them, as you would imagine, about only the most important things. Yes? One important thing he speaks to them about, I'm convinced, leaves the disciples going, but why? Here it is. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat, but I have prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail, and when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Jesus speaks directly to Simon, but everyone else is in the room and can hear. And anyway, it says that he's asked to sift all of you. It wasn't Simon in particular. By Simon, Peter, same guy. Simon, Satan has asked to sift you as wheat. But why? Surely at that point, Jesus is sitting with them. It's a very intimate setting. They're sharing this meal together. He's telling them about incredible things that are to come. And then he says, oh, by the way, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. But why? I'm sure the disciples, but why? Why does he want access to us? Why should he have access to us? And frankly, why, Jesus, are you even telling us this? But why? What's going on here? Why? Those of us who maybe have been around the Christian story for a while, you'll know that shortly after this interaction, shortly after that Last Supper, Jesus is arrested, beaten, crucified, and dies. And what happens is all of the disciples flee. You remember the story? Do you remember one guy in particular whose story is told? Denies Jesus 3 times. Simon, Simon. Satan has asked to sift you. This crucifixion experience, what they were about to see with their eyes, was the great sifting that Satan had initiated or asked for. Satan asked and was granted access to sift them. But why? Why? Why should he be? When I told Kirsten my message in the week, that was her reaction. No, this is not right. Anyone else? You feel a similar way? Okay, well, let's just leave it there then. I want to answer the question, but why? Why does this sifting happen? Why is Satan allowed access to? Because it happens. It says that he has asked, and clearly after that, the crucifixion plays out. So he is granted access to sift them. Is there anyone here, you're familiar with what I'm saying? He asked for access and he was granted access. Why? Why did Jesus do that? Why not just say no? I want to answer the question by looking closely at sifting, and particularly the process of sifting wheat. Right, brace yourself for an experience in agricultural information. Oh, here it comes. This is a field of wheat. It's not the park outside here. That's, in case you were wondering. This is a field of wheat, and this part of it here is called the head of the wheat. I'm assuming you know nothing, so I'm just going to get everyone up to the same place. That's a field of wheat. What you see circled there in red is what's called the head of the wheat. It contains the only useful part of the plant for people. Here's a close-up of what a wheat head looks like. And what happens when it's time for harvesting wheat is the head gets removed from the stem because the head is the only part that's useful. And if you have a look, let me circle right there. Each little pod there, that is called a husk. And inside every one of those is a kernel of wheat. And that is the only useful part in that entire process. The only part that gets used to make flour is the tiny little kernel hidden inside that husk on the end of a long, skinny, dry stick. With me? Do you feel very informed now about wheat farming? You're like thinking, hey, if my current career doesn't work out, at least there's something in the pipeline I can look into. The kernel is all that's used to make flour. The rest is absolutely useless and soon gets discarded. It's called chaff, or if you're American, chaff. If you're a runner, chafe. I don't know where that came from. The process of extracting the kernels from the rest, the little useful part, the process of extracting the kernels from the rest is what is called sifting. Now, the really technical part, we won't go there now, is there's a process there that's called threshing. There's a process called winnowing, but we're not going to get into all of that. All we need to know right now is that the sifting process happens when the little wheat head is broken off the stalk and they are assembled and put into a big sieve, a big basket with holes in the bottom. Then, here's where it gets funky. Then whoever is doing the sifting shakes that basket, that sieve, shakes it so forcefully and so violently that the husks break open because they smash against each other and the friction causes them to break open and the little kernel inside is loosened. And then it comes out of the husk and it falls through the small holes in the basket, and so it has been sifted, and now you have the kernels all falling out. The sifting process is violent. If you've watched this or watch it on YouTube, it's violent and it's vigorous. You can't do it gently. You need to be hearing some of what I'm saying. You can't sift something gently. Doesn't work. Sifting requires force, or the husks won't break and the kernels won't be dislodged. So when Satan says or asks to sift the disciples as wheat, he is very clearly saying that he wants to forcefully shake them. It's not going to be a pleasant or gentle experience. He didn't ask the Lord Jesus, do you mind if I massage them? Do you mind if I just... It was going to be a force, and Jesus knew it too. There was going to be a forceful shaking of the faith of these people. Here we go. He wanted to forcefully shake them. It's not going to be gentle or pleasant. Here's why. Satan's goal in the forceful shaking was to destroy. So you've got to ask yourself, why was he permitted to do it? Why, if Jesus knew that his disciples were going to be forcefully shaken, why did he say yes? Why did he allow it to happen? Well, simply because Jesus had his own goals in mind for the sifting process. Yes, Satan's goal was to destroy, but God's goal was to develop. Watch for the alliteration here and clap at the end. Satan's goal was to destroy. God's plan was to develop. Satan's desire was the implosion of their faith. God's dream was the improvement of their faith. Satan's mission was to pulverize, and God's vision is to purify. The same process is about to take place, but there's two very different outcomes that are going to happen. I'll make this clear statement and then we'll draw sort of towards a conclusion. The sifting is necessary for the true value to emerge. If you just grind up the whole wheat plant, yes, I don't know what you're going to get, but you don't want to eat it because it's going to be like eating sticks. The kernel needs to be released, and in order for that to happen, sifting needs to take. Sifting has to happen for the true value to emerge. And that's why Jesus permits it. That's why Jesus says, okay, you can sift them, because he knows in his mind at that moment, this is going to be good. This is going to be playing to my agenda and not his. He wants it for destruction. I will use it for development. He wants it to implode their faith. I will use it to improve their faith. He wants it to pulverize them. I will use it to purify them. He says the following. Let's keep going with the text. Oh, I should have shown you that pic. It's a beaut. Those are the kernels. That's the head. That's what they look like when they come out. Still not very appetizing, eh? No, it needs to be ground up as well, but that's another message. Simon, Simon, Satan has asked to sift all of you as wheat. Now you know that he's not going to offer us a massage. We're going to be forcefully and violently shaken. Those disciples, and I believe the message translates into today's life. I believe that he still asks, and I believe he is still often permitted to shake us violently. Jesus says, I've prayed for you, Simon, that your faith may not fail. That your faith may not fail. Now, it's true. If you remember the Bible story, it's true that shortly after this interaction, Simon Peter denies Jesus 3 times. Eh? Yeah, I saw you with him. No, I've never met this man. No, we're pretty sure that we've seen you. No, I've never met him. And then a 3rd time, and then a rooster crows. If you don't know the story, Luke 22 tells it very beautifully. But essentially, the point I'm making is Satan is asked to sift you. All of what goes down, goes down. It is likely that in our minds we begin to think that Simon's faith did fail. Because he did. He gave up. He quit. Eh? I put it to you, and this might just be semantics, but I put it to you that his faith didn't fail, but it certainly did have a faltering step. How do I know that? Because even in that moment before it all happened, Jesus already said to him, when you have turned back, you see this. Jesus knew that something was going to go amiss. He knew that Peter would stumble, but he also knew that it wouldn't be the end of the story. He also knew in that moment, you're going to survive. Your faith's going to improve through this, Peter, Simon. You're going to, in fact, emerge stronger and better. Incidentally, Jesus knew that he wouldn't fail. That's why I said, when you have turned back. After his sifting, back to Simon Peter, after his sifting, Simon emerged with a purer faith. How do I know? We'll see in a moment. Like wheat, remember when you sift wheat, it has to knock off the impurities and the dirt, knocks off that husk, but there's also all kinds of dust and stuff that gets accumulated in there. And so the sifting gets rid of all of the chaff so that only the kernel remains. Is everybody still with me here? I'm going as swiftly as I can because I realize it's warm. And many of you are raging hungry. It's okay. It's going to be all right. So I didn't put a picture of bread up. I would have lost you all by now. It's just keeping it with seeds, things that don't look appetizing at all. Here we go. Like with wheat, the impurities and the dirt had to be knocked off. And in Peter's life, or in Simon's life, the impurity of pride and the dirt of self-reliance had to be knocked out of him. And the only way that God in his infinite wisdom thought the best way to do this was through a sifting. When Satan said, let me sift them, he thought, I'm going to destroy him. In that moment, Jesus says, okay, go for it, but I don't really know what you think you're doing. Well, I know what you think you're doing, but let me tell you what's actually going to happen. Not only is he not going to be fail, but in fact, he's going to emerge far stronger. So sift. It puts a different spin on this thing. Suddenly we don't think of Jesus as being a abandoner. Oh, wow, Satan has asked to sift you. Hey, go for it. Hey, do what you like. When we are sifted, folks, Jesus is super engaged in the process. Don't lose heart if you're going through a sifting right now. It's not like he's just left us to our own devices and also is a passive watcher. I wonder how this will go down. I wonder if they'll make it. Our sifting is watched over, is presided over by the one who loves our souls more than we can ever understand. We are not sifted for destruction. We are sifted for development. It is to purify our faith. And it's always good when it happens. In fact, the Bible says we should rejoice when we face trials of many kinds. Yeah, you also don't like it. There's an interesting verse in the Bible that says, you intended to harm me. It's Joseph speaking to his brothers. You intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. Many times in our life, things happen which the enemy intends for harm. He wants to destroy. He wants to steal, kill, destroy. That's his modus operandi. It's what he's been doing since he's been the devil. Imagine being the enemy of God. When the worst you could think to inflict upon somebody, he turns around for the benefit of those whom he loves. He does it every single time. Every single time. When our faith is sifted, I want you to know, number one, that Jesus says, I've prayed for you, that your faith will not fail. He is engaged in the sifting process. He does not leave us alone. Number two, when we are sifted, let's remember that not only is Jesus engaged, but he has an alternate agenda. He is working out something else that at that point no one else knows. It's certainly not lined up with the devil's agenda. The frustration for us often is that what he has lined up doesn't sometimes align with our agenda either. Anyone else honest enough to admit that? 4 of us. 8. Oh, it's growing now. Folks, often, what he wants to do in us doesn't line up with what we think. That's okay. As long as it doesn't line up with what the devil thinks, if it doesn't line up with what we think, we are always best served to let it line up with what he wants for our lives. Let him sift us. Let him. It's good for us. It's good. Makes your faith stronger. In fact, as I said earlier, that's the only way it really can emerge pure, sifted, stronger. Simon's sifted faith positioned him for greater fruitfulness. I close with this. It says there in Genesis 50, not only did God turn what they intended for harm for good, but read that last sentence. He brought me to this position so that I could save the lives of many people. Not only does our sifted faith serve us better, our sifted faith serves others better. Remember Simon Peter, when you have turned back, go and strengthen your brothers. Folks, a sifted faith is not just about us. God sifts our faith for the benefit of others. Let him sift. Jesus is engaged in the process. Number 2, he has his own agenda. That's a better agenda than what you could come up with for your own life. And number 3, a sifted faith is not only better for us, it serves those around us. Those are 3 good reasons, I think. To when we go through a season of sifting, by all means, still ask, but why? Don't pretend like it's a fine question to ask, but why? And then let your mind come back to this message and that story and realize that God hasn't ceased to be good. He hasn't had an off day. He wasn't caught by surprise. When we get sifted, he's engaged. He has his own agenda. And number 3, it makes us stronger, not just for ourselves, but for others. I close with this story. I think I might have told it before, but that's okay. The story is told of a wealthy businessman who during the recession lost his job, a sizable fortune, and even his home. Then to add to his sorrow, his precious wife died. The man did all that he could to tenaciously hang on to his faith. One day he was out walking in search of employment. And whilst doing that, he saw men doing some stonework on a large church building. One of them was chiseling a triangular piece of rock. Man was intrigued at the detail, at the workmanship being put into this one tiny triangular rock. And so he said to him, where are you going to put that rock? The workman said, do you see that little opening right up there near the spire? Well, I'm shaping this stone down here so that it will fit in up there. In that moment, tears filled my friend's eyes, the story goes, as he walked away, for the Lord had spoken to him through that man, and his words gave new meaning to the troubled situation. I'm shaping it down here to fit in up there. Folks, our faith does get sifted. And the benefits, I say, are fourfold, or the thoughts that we have about this when we ask about why, our thoughts are fourfold. Number one, Jesus is engaged when we're being sifted. Number two, he has his own agenda. It'll end well for us. Number three, it won't just end well for us, it'll end well for others because our faith will be purified and strengthened, and that'll benefit others. And then the fourth one here, our faith is sifted in this life to benefit us in that life. We are shaped down here to fit in up there. Let him sift. When Jesus said to Satan, okay, he wasn't abandoning his people. He was leading them. He was caring, and he was setting us up to have a stronger, purer, better faith than ever before. So where you're standing, I realize many of you might be being sifted even right now. And so this message can feel timely. You can love me for this message. You go like, this is helpful. Or you can be detesting me in your heart right now. You're like, I don't want to hear this. I don't like it. This sifting must stop. Folks, don't shoot the messenger. I bring this to you with a pure heart. I know some of you have been sifted more vigorously than I have in my life. I'm willing to admit that. Some people in this room have been through bigger loss than I can as yet understand. I'm not trying to make light of your loss. I'm not trying to pretend like it was fun at the time or even is fun now. I just come to you and say, the Lord God himself, the shepherd of your soul, allows sifting for our benefit. It will be good in the long run. I close with this text. These trials are only to test your faith, to show that it is strong and pure. It is being tested as fire tests and purifies gold. And your faith is far more precious to God than mere gold. So if your faith remains strong after being tried by fiery trials, it will bring you much praise and glory and honor on the day when Jesus Christ is revealed to the whole world. At the end of the service, we're going to pray, not for ourselves. Remember, we put our hand on someone's shoulder and we pray. I want you to know that when you put your hand on someone else's shoulder, when you speak to someone else in this week, maybe you employ people, maybe you have people who report to you at work. I want you to realize, as Plato said, be kind, for everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. Folks, it's not just our faith that gets tested and put through the ringer or sifted. Other people too. Let's be kind. Don't be harsh. So people are being sifted at levels we can't understand. Let's show them Christian love. Let's be kind. Yes? Even when that person cuts in front of you? Don't you be the sifter. Agent of Satan. Okay. We're going to sing a closing song. I hope this message has been helpful. I prepared this message, I'm telling you, with a pure heart, knowing that many of you are facing some stuff. Those of you who aren't facing stuff and are sitting there feeling quite chuffed right now, you're sifting, it's coming. Just be prepared, brace yourself. The Lord is in it. He's engaged in our sifting. Number two, he has his own agenda and it will leave us better and stronger. Number three, that agenda will leave us stronger, not just for ourselves, but for others. And number four, one day we'll be home. And we are shaped here to fit in there. And that matters much more. Excellent. Let's get the music team up. We'll sing our closing song. I hope they sing as well as I preach today. I'm just saying. Tough act to follow. Let's